The council chamber was enormous. It could hold 1,000 beings, and today it was full. Representatives from all 12 species sat in curved rows that rose up like a stadium. Each species had their own section, specially designed for their needs. The Cravathi sat on platforms of crystal. The Sulveran occupied stations with dozens of screens and data feeds. The Nephrons floated in their containment spheres. And in the smallest section, high up in the back, sat the humans. There were only 5 humans at the council. Captain Mina Choi sat in the center, wearing her formal uniform with its earth patch on the shoulder. Next to her was Jiho. The other 3 were support staff, there mostly to observe and learn. Captain Choi leaned close to Jiho and whispered, "Stay quiet. Let the others talk. We are here to show respect, not to interfere." Jiho nodded. He understood her worry. Captain Choi had fought hard to earn her position. She was brilliant, tough, and dedicated, but she carried the weight of representing all of humanity. Every decision she made reflected on their entire species. In the center of the chamber, a hologram of the Viridian cipher floated and slowly rotated. Its strange symbols cast odd shadows across the faces of the assembled aliens. Commander Thalrex stood at the speaking platform. His crystal skin reflected the light from 100 different sources, making him shine like a prism. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber. "We have reached a critical point," he began. "The Dominion fleet will arrive at the temple site in 18 days. We have 3 options. First, we destroy the temple and deny everyone access to the archive. Second, we attempt to defend the site and fight the Dominion. Third, we solve the cipher in the time remaining." Murmurs filled the chamber. Different species made different sounds when they talked among themselves. Clicks, whistles, hums, and a few actual words in common language. A Cravathi general stood. "The first option is cowardice. We should fight," a Sulveran elder responded. "The second option is foolish. The Dominion fleet outnumbers us 3-1. We would lose." "Then we must solve the cipher," Ambassador Kell said, the sphere pulsing with urgent orange light. "But how? We have failed for 60 years. What can change in 18 days? Dr. Ixara rose from her seat. She tapped on a data pad and new images appeared above the cipher. Complex equations and probability matrices that made Jiho's eyes hurt to look at. "I propose one final computational attempt," she said. "If we link all 17 quantum supercomputers in a parallel processing array, we can try 73 billion new combinations per second. In 18 days, we could test every possible solution up to the 9th dimensional matrix. And if the solution exists in the 10th dimension..." Someone asked. Dr. Ixara's 6 eyes dimmed. "Then we will have failed." More discussion followed. Technical arguments that Jiho only partly understood. The aliens spoke of quantum entanglement and multi-dimensional topology. They referenced mathematical theorems that humans had not yet discovered. It was like listening to God's debate. But through all of it, Jiho kept staring at the cipher. He had spent all night thinking about it, looking at the data files that Ambassador Kell had given him access to. And the more he looked, the more certain he became. They were looking at it wrong. All these brilliant minds, all this computing power, all this advanced mathematics, and they were missing something obvious, something so simple that a child could see it. The debate went on for another hour. Species argued with each other. Proposals were made and rejected. Tempers rose. Commander Thalrex had to call for order 3 times. Finally, a vote was called. The council would approve Dr. Ixara's computational attempt. It was their best chance. Maybe their only chance unless we destroy the temple, the Cravathi general said darkly. "That option remains on the table," Thalrex nodded. "If Dr. Ixara's attempt fails, we will destroy the site with 3 days remaining. We cannot allow the Dominion to succeed where we have failed." The meeting was almost over. Representatives were starting to stand, preparing to leave. Jiho looked at Captain Choi. She gave him a firm look that said, "Do not even think about it," but Jiho was thinking about it. He was thinking about his grandfather's puzzle box. He was thinking about how 60 years of computational power had failed to solve what might be a simple problem. He was thinking about how humans saw the world differently than other species. And he was thinking about what would happen if he was wrong. Earth would be humiliated. Captain Choi would be disgraced. Humanity might lose its place in the council. But if he was right? Jiho stood up. The chamber was so large and noisy that nobody noticed at first. Captain Choi grabbed his arm, her fingers tight. "Sit down," she hissed. "What are you doing?" But Jiho gently pulled away. He started walking down the steps toward the chamber floor. Now a few beings noticed. A Solveran pointed. A Kravathi turned to look. By the time Jiho reached the main floor, the entire chamber had gone quiet. 1,000 eyes and many other types of sensors focused on him. Commander Thalrex's crystal skin flickered with surprise. Dr. Ixara's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "The human wishes to speak?" Thalrex said. His tone made it clear how unusual this was. Jiho swallowed. His mouth was dry. Every instinct told him to turn around and go back to his seat. But he had come this far. He had to try. "Yes, Commander," he said. His voice sounded small in the huge chamber. "If I may, I would like to make an observation about the cipher." "An observation?" Dr. Ixara's 6 eyes narrowed. "Young human, we have been observing this cipher for 60 years. What could you possibly add?" Murmurs of agreement. A few beings laughed, making sounds like wind chimes or grinding stones. Up in the human section, Captain Choi had her head in her hands. But Ambassador Kel's sphere pulsed with curious yellow light. "Let him speak," Kel said. "Courtesy demands we hear all perspectives." Thalrex nodded slowly. "Very well. Speak, human." Jiho walked toward the floating hologram. His hands shook slightly, but he kept them at his sides. He looked up at the cipher, at its complex dancing symbols. "I have been reviewing the data you so generously shared, Ambassador Kel," he began. "And I noticed something. Every species in this council views the universe through their own evolved perspective. Obviously," Dr. Ixara said. "That is basic psychology." "Yes," Jiho agreed. "The Kravathi evolved with crystalline biology. You perceive light and structure in ways we cannot imagine. The Solveran have quantum-capable brains. You process in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Nepherans exist as energy patterns. You see the universe as waves and frequencies." "What is your point?" Thalrex asked. Jiho took a breath. "My point is that humans evolved differently. We are simple creatures from a heavy gravity world. We see in basic 3 dimensions. We think in straight lines and simple geometry. We are, by your standards, primitive." More murmurs. Some beings nodded. Others made sounds of agreement. Yes, humans were primitive. Everyone knew this, and maybe, Jiho continued, that is exactly what we need. Because sometimes when everyone is looking at a problem in complex ways, nobody thinks to try the simple approach. He reached toward the hologram controls. His heart pounded. This was it. The moment where he would either change everything or destroy his career and embarrass his entire species. "Have you tried?" he asked quietly, just turning it upside down. The chamber erupted in chaos. Dr. Ixara's laugh was like glass breaking. "Turn it upside down?" She stepped forward, all 6 eyes blazing with contempt. "Human, do you have any idea how insulting that is? We have rotated this cipher through 17 million different dimensional configurations. We have tested every possible orientation across multiple planes of existence." Other voices joined in. Beings shouted in various languages. Some laughed. Some expressed outrage that a primitive human would waste the council's time with such a childish suggestion. Commander Thalrex raised one of his 4 arms. The chamber slowly quieted. His crystal skin had turned a deep purple, showing either anger or deep thought. It was hard to tell which. "Explain yourself, human," he said. "Fully." Jiho's hands were sweating, but he forced himself to stay calm. He thought about his grandfather again. The old man teaching him patience, teaching him to see what others missed. "Dr. Ixara said you tested 17 million dimensional configurations," Jiho began. "But were all those tests complex? Multidimensional, quantum?" "Obviously," Ixara snapped. "We used the most advanced mathematics available." Jiho nodded. "That is what I thought. You approached the problem as advanced beings. You looked for advanced solutions. You assumed that a civilization as sophisticated as the Viridians would create a sophisticated puzzle. And they did," Thalrex said. "The cipher is obviously complex, is it?" Jiho asked. "Or does it just look complex because we are viewing it from the wrong angle?" Ambassador Kel's sphere pulsed with thoughtful green light. "Continue," Kel said. Jiho pointed at the hologram. "Last night I looked at the historical data about the Viridians. Dr. Yoon from our ship helped me translate some of the old records. The Viridians were obsessed with perspective. Their art, their architecture, their entire philosophy was built around the idea that reality changes based on how you look at it." He moved closer to the hologram. They built structures that looked like one thing from the north, but something completely different from the South. They wrote books that told different stories depending on which direction you read them. Everything about their culture was about viewpoint. What does this have to do with turning it upside down? Dr. Ixara demanded. Everything, Jiho said. Because what if the cipher is not about complex mathematics at all? What if it is about perspective? What if the Viridians designed it to be solved not by computing power, but by the ability to see things differently? The chamber had gone quiet again. Beings were listening now. Really listening. My grandfather gave me a puzzle box once, Jiho continued. I was 10 years old. The box had symbols carved all over it. Complex patterns that seemed to mean something. I spent weeks trying to decode them. I used every trick I knew. I even tried to break the box open. He smiled slightly at the memory. Then one day my grandfather asked me a simple question. He said, "Have you tried looking at it from above?" So I held the box up over my head and looked at the bottom, and suddenly, all those complex symbols lined up into simple arrows. Arrows pointing to the corners where the lock mechanisms were hidden. The whole puzzle was designed to be solved from one specific viewpoint. That is a child's toy, Ixara said. But her voice had lost some of its edge. Yes, Jiho agreed. But what if the Viridian cipher is the same? A test not of intelligence, but of the ability to think simply? To see what is actually there instead of searching for complexity? He turned to face the assembled council. You have been approaching this with quantum computers and multidimensional mathematics because you are advanced species. That is how you think. But humans evolved on a heavy gravity world. We think in simple three-dimensional space. Up, down, left, right, forward, back. That is our limitation. But maybe just this once that limitation is an advantage. Ambassador Kell drifted closer. What exactly are you proposing? Jiho reached for the hologram controls. I am proposing we stop trying to solve this cipher with complexity. I am proposing we try the simplest possible solution. A single rotation, 180 degrees on a vertical axis. In human terms, turning it upside down. Ridiculous, Dr. Ixara said. But she did not stop him. Nobody stopped him. Jiho's fingers touched the controls. The hologram responded. The cipher began to rotate. Slowly, smoothly. The symbols blurred as they moved. 90 degrees. The cipher looked strange from this angle, but still meaningless. 135 degrees. Still nothing. 170 degrees. Jiho held his breath. 180 degrees. The cipher stopped rotating. For a moment, nothing happened. Jiho felt his heart sink. He had been wrong. He had just humiliated himself and all of humanity in front of the entire council. Captain Choi would never forgive him. Earth would be thrown out of the council. Everything was ruined. Then the symbols moved, not chaotically like before, purposefully. The three-dimensional patterns collapsed into 2 dimensions. The twisting geometries straightened into lines. The meaningless shapes resolved into clear, precise mathematical notation, and in the center of it all, coordinates, star charts, vector calculations. A map by the ancestors, Commander Thalrex whispered. His crystal skin flashed through every color in the spectrum at once. Dr. Ixara stumbled forward, her 6 eyes wide. Impossible. This is impossible. She pulled out a datapad with shaking hands. The numbers were scrolling across dozens of screens. Verification algorithms running. Mathematical proofs being generated automatically. It is correct, she said, her voice barely audible. After 60 years. After trillions of calculations. The answer was a simple 180-degree rotation on a single axis. She looked at Jiho and something like respect flickered in her eyes. How did you know? Jiho let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. I did not know. I guessed. I just thought about what the Viridians valued. Perspective. And I thought about how every species in this room is brilliant and advanced and thinks in complex ways. But sometimes the hardest part of a puzzle is not solving it. It is realizing it does not need to be solved in a complex way. The council chamber exploded with activity. Every being was talking at once. Data was being transmitted. The coordinates were being analyzed. Ships were being prepared. Ambassador Kell floated over to Jiho. The sphere pulsed with warm, golden light. That was remarkable, young human. Truly remarkable. Commander Thalrex approached as well. His earlier anger had transformed into something else. Respect, perhaps. Or maybe just shock. He placed one of his crystal hands on Jiho's shoulder. It felt cool and smooth like glass. You have done what the greatest minds in the galaxy could not, he said. You have my apology, human. And my gratitude. Dr. Ixera walked over more slowly. She stood in front of Jiho for a long moment, her 6 eyes studying him. Then she bowed her head slightly. I was wrong about your species, she said. I have spent 30 years being the smartest being in most rooms. Today I learned that intelligence and wisdom are not always the same thing. Thank you for the lesson. Up in the human section, Captain Mina Choi was smiling. It was a small smile, carefully controlled. But Jiho saw it and he felt warmth spread through his chest. The council quickly organized. The coordinates pointed to a binary star system in the outer rim. A fleet would be assembled immediately. They would race to find the archive before the Dominion learned that the cipher had been solved, and Jiho, the young human engineer who had been overlooked and dismissed, would be going with them. The real adventure was about to begin. The massive space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most cities on Earth. 12 different alien species worked inside its silver walls. They called it the Galactic Council headquarters, and it was the center of power in this part of the galaxy. In the main research lab, Commander Thalrex stood before a glowing hologram. He was tall, maybe 3 meters high, with 4 arms and skin that looked like crystal. When light hit him, rainbow colors danced across his body. Right now, those colors were dark red. He was angry. 60 years, he said, his voice deep and rough. 60 years and 17 quantum supercomputers, and we are no closer to solving this puzzle. Dr. Ixara clicked her mandibles in frustration. She was a Solveran with gray skin and 6 bright yellow eyes arranged in 2 rows on her face. Her brain could process information faster than most computers. She had spent 30 years of her life studying this one problem, 30 years with no answer. The mathematics do not follow any known pattern, she said. We have tried every computational approach, every algorithm, every mathematical system we know. Her 6 eyes blinked one after another. It is as if the Viridians designed this puzzle specifically to be unsolvable. The hologram between them showed what they called the Viridian mathematical cipher. It looked like a ball of light covered in strange symbols that moved and changed. The symbols were 3-dimensional, twisting through space in ways that hurt the eyes to watch. Sometimes they looked like numbers. Sometimes like letters, sometimes like nothing at all. The Viridians had been an ancient race, long dead now. They had disappeared millions of years ago, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. This cipher was found carved into a temple on a dead world. According to the old stories, it contained coordinates to something called the Archive of Knowledge, a place where the Viridians had stored all their technology and wisdom. Any civilization that found the archive would leap forward by thousands of years. They would gain technology that could change everything. That was why the Council had spent so much time and money trying to solve the puzzle. Ambassador Kell floated nearby in a transparent sphere. Kell was a Nephirin, a being made of gas with no solid body. Different colors swirled through the sphere when Kell spoke. Right now the colors were muddy brown, showing worry. The Dominion knows about the cipher, Kell said. The voice came from speakers on the sphere. Their fleet is 3 weeks away from the temple site. If we cannot solve this puzzle soon, we must destroy the temple. We cannot let them have it. Commander Thalrex's crystals flashed dark purple. Destroying the temple meant losing their only chance at the archive. But letting the Dominion get it would be worse. The Dominion was a military empire that conquered other worlds. With Viridian technology, they would be unstoppable. 3 weeks, Thalrex repeated. That is not enough time. Near the back of the lab, almost forgotten, stood a young human. His name was Jiho Kim, and he was 28 years old. He wore the gray uniform of a council engineer, but the uniform still looked new. Humans had only joined the council 5 years ago, and most aliens still thought of them as primitives. Jiho watched the hologram spin and change. He had been standing there for 2 hours now, just watching. Nobody had spoken to him. Dr. Ixara had looked at him once when he entered, her 6 eyes measuring him for a brief moment before dismissing him as unimportant. He did not mind. Jiho was used to being overlooked. His assignment to the council was mostly ceremonial. Earth wanted to show it could contribute, but everyone knew humans were the least advanced species in the council. Their computers were slow. Their mathematics were basic. Their understanding of the universe was like a child's compared to races that had been exploring space for millions of years. But Jiho kept watching the cipher. Something about it bothered him. Not the mathematics or the complex patterns, something simpler. We should run another simulation, Dr. Ixara said. Perhaps if we approach the problem from 17 dimensions instead of 16. We have tried that, Thalrex said. We have tried everything. Then we increase the processing power. Connect all 17 quantum computers in parallel. Pool every computational resource the Council has. Ambassador Kell's sphere turned gray. That was the color of doubt. That will take 2 weeks to set up. We do not have 2 weeks. Silence fell over the lab. The only sound was the quiet hum of the hologram and the breathing of various aliens. Well, breathing for those who breathed. Kell just swirled. Jiho tilted his head, looking at the cipher from a different angle. His grandfather had taught him to solve puzzles when he was young. Old mechanical puzzles from Korea made of wood and metal. His grandfather always said the same thing. Sometimes the hardest puzzles have the simplest solutions. You just have to look at them the right way. He thought about those words now as he watched symbols twist through impossible geometries. The aliens were so smart, so advanced. They could do things with mathematics that humans would not understand for centuries. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe they were too smart. The Council will meet tomorrow, Thalrex announced. We must decide whether to destroy the temple or make one final attempt. Everyone should prepare recommendations. The meeting ended. Dr. Ixara and her team of scientists left, muttering to each other in several different languages. Ambassador Kell floated away, the sphere making a quiet humming sound. Commander Thalrex stood for a moment longer, staring at the hologram with his crystal face unreadable. Then he too left. Jiho remained. The lab was empty now except for him and the glowing puzzle. He walked closer to the hologram, standing directly beneath it. The light washed over his face, making strange shadows. He reached out slowly, carefully, and touched the control panel. The hologram responded to his fingerprints. It was keyed to allow any council member to interact with it. He rotated the cipher, watching how the symbols changed. Dr. Ixara had said they tried every angle. Every dimension. Every mathematical approach. 60 years of the smartest beings in the galaxy working on one problem. But had they tried the simple things? Jiho smiled slightly. Probably not. When you were that smart, you stopped thinking about simple solutions. You assumed everything had to be complicated. His communicator beeped. A message from Captain Mina Choi, his commanding officer. She was the first human to reach a command position in the Council military. The message was short. Remember your place tomorrow. Do not embarrass us, Jiho understood. Humans were still on trial. One mistake and Earth could lose its Council membership. The other species were looking for any excuse to say humans were not ready. He looked back at the cipher one more time. The symbols danced and twisted. So complicated, so impossible. Or maybe not. Jiho left the lab and walked through the quiet corridors of the station. Outside the windows, stars glittered in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, a Dominion fleet was racing toward the Viridian Temple. Somewhere out there was an archive full of ancient knowledge. And somewhere in his mind, an idea was forming. He just hoped he was right. And he hoped the Council would listen to a human who had only been here for 5 years. Tomorrow would tell. The fleet assembled in less than 6 hours. 3 Krivathi warships, massive and bristling with weapons, 2 Silveran science vessels, sleek and covered in sensor arrays, and 1 human frigate, small but fast. The human ship was called Aurora. She was not much to look at compared to the alien vessels. Her hull was plain gray metal. Her weapons were basic, but she had been built on Earth with human hands, and Captain Mina Choi commanded her with pride. Jiho stood on Aurora's bridge, watching the other ships through the view screen. He still could not quite believe what had happened. 24 hours ago, he had been nobody, an overlooked junior engineer. Now he was chief consultant to a Council expedition. Dr. Ixara herself had insisted on it. The human showed us something we could not see, she had told Commander Thalrex. His perspective may prove valuable again. We would be fools not to bring him. So here he was on a ship racing toward the outer rim, racing to find ancient secrets, racing against time and the Dominion fleet. Captain Choi approached him. She stood beside him, looking at the view screen. Her expression was neutral, but Jiho knew her well enough to see she was pleased. You surprised everyone yesterday, she said quietly. Including me, I surprised myself, Jiho admitted. Choi smiled. That was probably the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever seen. I have not decided which yet. She paused. But I am proud of you. And proud to be human today. Those words meant more to Jiho than all the praise from the aliens. Captain Choi did not give compliments lightly. "All ships, this is Commander Thalrex." His voice came through the speakers. "We jumped to hyperspace in 60 seconds. Estimated travel time, 14 standard days. Stay alert. The Dominion may already know about the cipher solution." Jiho felt the familiar sensation of the ship's engines building power. The stars outside began to stretch and blur. Then, with a flash of blue-white light, Aurora leaped into hyperspace. The journey would take 2 weeks. Jiho spent most of that time studying everything he could about the Viridians. Dr. Sora Yoon, a human xenoarchaeologist who had joined them from another ship, helped him translate ancient records. Sora was older than Jiho, maybe 40, with gray starting to show in her black hair. She had devoted her life to studying dead civilizations, and the Viridians fascinated her more than any other. They were remarkable, she told him as they sat in Aurora's small research room. The Viridians built things that should not be possible, buildings that changed shape based on the time of day, art that told different stories from different angles. They saw the universe as fluid, not fixed. "How did they die?" Jiho asked. Sora shook her head. "Nobody knows. They were at the height of their civilization, more advanced than anyone. Then they just vanished. No war, no plague, no disaster. They simply stopped existing. All that remains are ruins and mysteries. And this archive we are searching for? If the legends are true, it contains their entire civilization's knowledge, technology, science, philosophy, everything they learned in 1,000,000 years of existence." Sora looked at him seriously. "Whoever finds it will become the most powerful force in the galaxy." That night, Jiho could not sleep. He kept thinking about what Sora had said. The most powerful force in the galaxy. That was a lot of responsibility. Too much, maybe? On the 10th day of the journey, Dr. Ixara contacted Aurora. She wanted to speak with Jiho. Captain Choi escorted him to the communication room. The holographic image of Dr. Ixara appeared. All 6 of her eyes focused on Jiho with unsettling intensity. "I have been studying the cipher solution," she said, "and I find myself bothered by a question. How did you know to try a simple rotation? Was it truly just intuition?" Jiho considered his answer carefully. "Partially intuition, but also observation. I noticed that every attempt to solve the cipher used advanced mathematics, multi-dimensional thinking, quantum processing. Nobody had tried basic 3-dimensional geometry, so I wondered, what if that was the point? What if the Viridians made a puzzle that could only be solved by beings who thought simply?" Ixara's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "In other words, we were too intelligent. Our sophistication blinded us. Not too intelligent," Jiho said. "Just thinking in the wrong direction. Sometimes being advanced means seeing complexity where none exists." Ixara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I have spent my life believing that intelligence solves all problems. That greater computational power and more advanced mathematics would always find the answer. You taught me I was wrong. Thank you for that lesson. It was humbling, but valuable." The transmission ended. Captain Choi looked at Jiho with raised eyebrows. That was high praise from her. Dr. Ixara does not admit error easily. On the 13th day, alarms blared throughout the fleet. Long-range sensors had detected something, ships, coming fast, the Dominion. They must have learned the cipher was solved. Somehow they had discovered the coordinates. And they were pushing their engines beyond safe limits to arrive first. Commander Thalrex's voice came through every ship. "All vessels increase speed to maximum. We must reach the archive before the Dominion. If we arrive at the same time, we will have no choice but to fight." Aurora's engines roared louder. The ship shook as she pushed past her normal limits. In the engine room, Taejun Park and his team worked frantically to keep everything stable. Taejun was Aurora's chief engineer. He was 10 years older than Jiho, with oil-stained hands and a quick mind. He could make damaged systems work with wire and hope. Right now, Aurora needed every bit of his skill. "We are pushing into the red zone, Captain," he reported to Choi. "These engines were not designed for this kind of stress." "Keep us going," Choi ordered. "We are humanity's representative in this fleet. We will not be the ship that falls behind." "Understood, Captain." The race was on. Council fleet versus Dominion fleet, both heading toward the same destination, both knowing that whoever arrived first would have an enormous advantage. Jiho watched the countdown timer. 1 day remaining. then 20 hours, then 12. The tension on Aurora's bridge was thick enough to touch. Every crew member focused on their station. Captain Choi stood in the center, her face calm but her hands gripping the command rail tightly. 6 hours to destination. 3 hours. 1 hour. Hana Lee, Aurora's communications officer, suddenly looked up from her console. Captain, I am detecting massive energy readings ahead. Something is there. Something big. Hana was young, only 25, but she had the best ears in the fleet. If anyone could pick up a signal, it was her. All ships, prepare for hyperspace exit, Thalrex commanded. We arrive in 60 seconds. Jiho gripped his chair as the countdown reached 0. The blue-white glow of hyperspace collapsed. Real space returned, and there, floating in the darkness between two bright stars, was something impossible. A cube. Massive beyond description, each side must have been 50 kilometers across. Its surface looked solid from one angle, but translucent from another. Light seemed to pass through it and around it at the same time. The Viridian Archive. And on the far side of the star system, more ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Dark ships with sharp angles and aggressive designs. The Dominion had arrived. Both fleets were here. Both were ready. And only one could claim the prize. The two fleets faced each other across the star system. Council ships on one side, Dominion ships on the other, and between them the impossible cube of the Viridian Archive. Weapons were charging. Shields were up. One wrong move and this would become a battle. Then Ambassador Kell's voice came across all channels. Dominion Fleet, this is Ambassador Kell of the Galactic Council. We propose a truce. Both our fleets arrived simultaneously. Fighting will only damage the archive that we both seek. Let us negotiate. Silence. Then a new voice responded, deep and cold. This is Lord Crevnell of the Dominion. Very well, Council. We will negotiate. But know this, we will have the archive. One way or another. Lord Crevnell was from a species called the Vorath. They were warriors bred for conquest. Crevnell himself was legendary for his ruthlessness and strategic genius. The agreement was simple. Both sides could send a small team to explore the archive. Whoever figured out how to enter it first would gain access. The losing side would withdraw. It was a gamble. But it was better than war. The council team assembled in Aurora's shuttle bay. Jiho, Dr. Ixara, Commander Thalrex, Captain Choi, Dr. Sorayun, and Hana Lee. 6 beings to represent the council's best hope. Remember, Thalrex said as they boarded the shuttle, the Viridians valued perspective above all else. Think about what we learned from the cipher. The shuttle launched. So did a Dominion shuttle from the other side. Both craft approached the archive slowly, carefully. Up close, the archive was even more impressive. And more confusing. Its surface seemed to shift and change. From one angle, it looked like solid metal. From another, like glass. From a third, like it was not there at all. Both shuttles landed on what seemed to be a platform extending from the archive. The two teams emerged and faced each other. Lord Crevnell was tall and armored. His species had thick, scaled skin and eyes that glowed red. He looked at the council team with obvious contempt. Behind him stood 6 Dominion soldiers, all armed and dangerous. So this is the council's best, he said. A crystal, an insect, a gas cloud, and 3 humans? He laughed. This will be easier than I thought. Captain Choi's hand moved toward her sidearm, but Thalrex stopped her with a gesture. Let him talk, the commander said quietly. We will let our success speak for us. The entrance to the archive was obvious. A large doorway in the cube's surface. But the doorway was covered in symbols. Dozens of them arranged in complex patterns. Both teams approached. The Dominion team pulled out scanning equipment and computers. They began analyzing the symbols with brutal efficiency. Dr. Ixara did the same, her data pads flashing with information. Dr. Sora Yoon studied the symbols, trying to translate them. Hana Lee recorded everything with her sensors. Jiho just stood and looked. Not at the symbols. At everything. The doorway. The surface of the archive. The way light hit the structure. The angle they were viewing it from. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The Dominion team worked frantically. Their computers ran millions of calculations. But nothing worked. The door remained sealed. The symbols are a code, Dr. Ixara said. But I cannot determine the pattern. It is like the cipher, but more complex. Sora shook her head. I recognize some of these symbols from other Viridian sites. But they are arranged in ways that make no sense. They contradict each other. 2 hours passed. Lord Krevnal was getting angry. His team's computers were overheating from constant use. Nothing was working. He glared at the council team as if this was somehow their fault. Jiho continued to observe. He walked around the doorway, looking at it from different angles. He tilted his head. He stepped back. He stepped closer, and then he saw it. The symbols were not a code at all. They were not even symbols. They were shadows. From most angles, they looked like complex writing. But from one very specific position, standing in one exact spot, they lined up differently. The shadows cast by the raised portions of the door created an entirely different pattern. A simple pattern, Commander, Jiho said quietly. I think I know how to open it. Everyone stopped. Both teams turned to look at him. Lord Krevenal's eyes narrowed. Explain, Thalrex said. We are looking at the surface, Jiho said, at what is carved there. But the Viridians were obsessed with perspective, remember? With how things change based on viewpoint. He pointed. These are not symbols to be decoded. They are shadows to be seen correctly. He walked to a specific spot in front of the door. From here, stand right here and look. The shadows form arrows, all pointing to the same location. Dr. Ixara moved to where Jiho stood. Her 6 eyes widened. By the ancestors, he is right. From this exact position, the shadows align. They all point to that spot. She indicated a small panel near the base of the door. The Dominion team rushed to see, but it was too late. Thalrex reached the panel first. He pressed it with one crystal hand. The door shuddered. Then it began to open. Slowly. Majestically. Ancient mechanisms that had not moved in millions of years came to life. Beyond the door was light, pure white light, and the sense of vast spaces stretching away into infinity. No, Lord Krevnal roared. He drew his weapon. If we cannot have it, no one will. But before he could fire, the archive itself responded. Energy barriers snapped into place around the Dominion team. They were trapped, frozen in fields of force. A hologram appeared in the doorway. A Viridian, or what Jiho assumed was a Viridian, tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift and change. The hologram spoke in a language that was instantly translated. Welcome, seekers of knowledge. You have passed the test. You understood that truth is not found through force or complexity, but through the willingness to see differently. The hologram looked directly at Jiho. And you, simple one from the heavy world, you remembered what your ancestors taught you, that sometimes the hardest problems have the easiest solutions. That perspective matters more than processing power. That wisdom and intelligence are not the same. Jiho felt his breath catch. The Viridian recording was speaking to him, as if they had known, millions of years ago, that someone exactly like him would come. We leave our knowledge to those who can see beyond themselves, the hologram continued. Use it wisely. Teach others what you have learned. And remember, the universe is not as complicated as advanced beings make it. Sometimes you just need to tilt your head and look at things differently. The hologram faded, the archive opened fully, and the council team, led by a young human engineer who had learned to see what others could not, stepped inside. Behind them, the Dominion team remained trapped. Their weapons and computers and force of will had meant nothing. The archive had judged them unworthy, but Jiho, who had simply learned to look at problems from a different angle, had earned humanity a place among the stars. Captain Choi put her hand on his shoulder. Well done, engineer. Well done. Dr. Ixara approached him, all 6 eyes showing something that might have been respect, or perhaps even friendship. You have taught us all a valuable lesson, Jiho Kim. Intelligence without perspective is blind. Complexity without simplicity is useless. I will not forget this. Inside the archive, endless halls stretched in every direction. Data cores, technology, knowledge accumulated over millions of years. It would take decades to understand it all. Centuries maybe, but they had time now. The Dominion had been defeated without a shot fired. The archive was theirs, and humanity, the youngest and simplest species in the council, had proven its worth. Jiho looked around at the wonders surrounding him. He thought about his grandfather teaching him to solve puzzles, teaching him to see things simply, teaching him that sometimes the answer is right in front of you. You just have to know how to look. And in that moment, standing in an archive built by beings long dead, Jiho understood what the Viridians had really left behind. Not just technology, Not just knowledge, but a lesson that every advanced civilization eventually needed to learn. That wisdom comes not from complexity, but from the courage to see things simply.